They say that positive thinking can change your life, that it can even reduce illness, increase your lifespan, and help you avoid depression. But is it really the best strategy? Is there a better way of thinking that transcends positive and negative to help you live an amazing life much quicker and faster?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to an On the Couch episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Positive thinking. Let's have a think about that. What is positive thinking? Well, Norman Vincent Peale wrote The Power of Positive Thinking in 1952, and it was the number one bestseller for 48 weeks. That's nearly a year. It was the number one bestseller. It was also on the bestseller list for 186 weeks. It has sold over 5 million copies and has been translated into over 40 different languages. Now, the key rules in the power of positive thinking are: picture yourself succeeding. So in your mind, you get a visual representation of what it is that you're after. And what you're attempting to achieve. So any goal that you might have, let's say you want to be a confident public speaker, you visualize yourself speaking confidently. If you want to have a certain monetary amount, you visualize yourself with that monetary amount in your life, how you would live your life. There also is, the second rule is to think positive thoughts to drown out negative thoughts. So that, if you start to, think of, oh man, this sucks and the world is terrible, then you repeat positive thoughts like, my life is wonderful, my life is good, to drown out those negative thoughts. You minimize obstacles. That means well, basically, as it sounds, you look for ways of not having obstacles in your life. And that can be, I think Charlie Munger talked a lot about this in his life, where he worked out, when he was young, he used to work out what was the thing that could most hurt him or most affect him getting what he wanted. And he just didn't do that. And that makes sense from a broader perspective of your life. And if you want more money, what's the key way of not having money? It's spending a lot. So you don't go shopping, you don't have credit cards, those kind of things. You just take those out of your way. So you're removing that obstacle. In a relationship, if you want a happy relationship, if you start dating someone and you get a feeling that they're probably a bit argumentative or something like that, and you don't want an argumentative relationship, and that's saying it depends on what you want. Some people like to have that banter backwards and forwards, but let's say you don't want that, and you get a feeling that person is being a little bit argumentative, you might immediately just not date them and go and date someone else. So that they're removing obstacles. You're looking at ways of taking that out of the way. And another way of removing an obstacle is if you might want a pay rise, for example, in the job that you do. And we've got a number of details in my pay rise course that is freely available on my website. But if you want a pay rise, one of the obstacles you can remove is a lack of skill. You might not have the skill to get that pay rise. And a way you would remove that obstacle is to get a bit of education. And there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to get a pay rise. But if you're interested in that, check out the course. It's free. The other thing that you can do is, or the other thing that the Norman Vincent Peale recommends is not to copy others. And that's comes down to, in my view, that comes down to creating your own value. If you're copying someone else, then what you're offering is not unique. Who you are is not unique. You just need to be yourself and find your own way, and that will create your own niche. Therefore, there isn't really any competition because you are quite unique. And everyone is unique. If you focus on your own uniqueness, you will create a certain way that you stand out in the world, and people will recognize that. So that's where that not copying others comes into play. Develop a strong self-respect. I think that's probably fairly self-evident. You if you respect yourself, you will believe that you have or you deserve the things that you're chasing after. So that's where that comes in mind and comes into play. And then the other point that's in the book is to develop a peaceful mind. And that's to allow you to get to know yourself. Because then you can identify, one, are you thinking negatively, and to shift it positively. You can picture yourself. So quietly, again, having that peaceful mind, you can picture yourself rather than just running the programs in your mind that you've partly were instilled, but partly allowed to be instilled. And I don't want to put that on. I don't like putting, the blame on other things. It's like as an adult, you have the choice to sit there and say, "Oh, it's not my fault." Well, it's your choice to change it. You can do that, and that's where having that peaceful mind, you can recognize and change the way you're thinking. You can be aware of the obstacles. Again, with a peaceful mind, you can be clear about what it is that's getting in your way. You can stop and have a think about that, and also developing a strong self-respect. So that's where peaceful mind comes in. Now, what is positive thinking? I mean, the book talks about going through those goals and achieving those goals, and it has been a long time since I've read that book. But what is positive thinking? Well, in general, positive thinking is a practice of focusing on the good in any given situation. Now, that doesn't mean you ignore the reality or make light of problems. It simply means that you approach the good and the bad in life with an expectation that things will go well. And this is where we generally, to determine, do you think positive or negative? I'm sure you've all heard of the test involving a glass. Is the glass half full or half empty? And this is where it comes back to when we're talking about it. I just said before, it simply means positive thinking. Simply means you approach the good and the bad in life with an expectation that things will go well. And this is where, again, that psychological test, is the glass half full or half empty? Now, in my mind, I used to do a lot of in-person training, and it was one of the questions I asked people early on in a training is the glass half full or half empty? And you get a number of people saying, well, it's half full, it's half empty. And then I'd respond and say, well, it's a trick question. The framing of the question in this way gives you those alternatives. And we tend to get ourselves stuck and thinking that they're the only alternatives available because we're focusing on the water. Is it half full or half empty? The reality is, unless the glass is in a vacuum, the glass is always full. It's got some liquid, if it's water or whatever liquid it might be, and then it's got air to the top. And we often miss that opportunity in knowing that the glass is actually always full, unless it's in a vacuum, and then we're getting into semantics now. But there's always people that want to get into that debate, and that's fine. We can have that discussion. The point is not about the semantics. The point is being open to different alternatives. And this is where positive thinking is about finding the good in the situation. you want to find the good in the situation, how that the good can help you, and by that framework, similar to the is the glass half full or half empty, that means there's a bad. So there's a bad in that situation, the bad in the event. The event that happened could be a bad event, and that can be very limiting in your ability to think and move forward. Because, if your natural belief, and our beliefs are all things that we've been taught, a belief is just a thought that you've had over and over again. So if your natural belief is that certain events are bad, then it's going to take a lot of effort to work through and find the good in that event, because it's like, and an example of this is there's an ancient story. I think it's from the East somewhere. I've heard a number of different uh, origins for the story, but the story is there's a farmer, and the farmer has a horse, and so that it's good because the farmer has a horse. It's a good thing that the horse can help with the farming. And then one day the horse runs away, which is, the farmer doesn't have the horse anymore, and that makes that bad. The day after that, the horse comes back. It runs back, and it brings a friend with it. So it's found another horse and it comes back. And so that event is good then, because the farmer has another horse. And then the farmer's child is breaking in the horse and falls off, breaks a leg, and has a broken leg. So this event of the horse running away is bad then, because it brought back this other horse, which the child fell off and broke its leg. Then the following day, the village of the farmer goes to war, and the child can't go to that war and be killed because the child has a broken leg. And is that original event with the horse running away, or having the horse, good or bad? Had a horse, the horse ran away, that was bad. And it all comes down to a matter of perspective. And I know that's a fable. There's probably some truth to that in somebody's story somewhere, or it's a combination of things. And when you look at some of these mythological stories, they have an element of truth to it. How does that relate to real life? Well, I've had many experiences like that. One I can was when I was a lot younger. I'd moved back, and I was studying in university, studying commerce, and I wanted to work in insolvency. I'm not sure why I did, but I wanted to work in insolvency. And so I've started to apply for some jobs after I'd got a certain way through the degree. And I found a firm that I wanted to work for. I was really excited to work for them. And I submitted a job application. I put a lot of effort into presenting it, not just, here's my CV, but, putting a lot of thought into how I would be of benefit to that firm, and what I could do to help the firm succeed. So putting things forward in that way, and that's what I mentioned before about the payroll course that I've got, or improving your pay course, is that these sort of things you want to show how you can create value. So I put a lot of effort into showing how to create value, and I turned up, and they had a beautiful office. It was very lovely, and I was waiting in the waiting room. I had my suit on and feeling quite confident. I went in and did the interview, and I walked out thinking, yeah, this is pretty good. I think I've got this. This is going to be great. I got a phone call, I think, a couple of days later, and they said, look, we appreciate you coming in and that, but sorry to let you know that you haven't got the job. Now, I immediately got upset with that, upset with myself, a bit of, I wouldn't say depression, but certainly feeling sad and sorry for myself. I'm like, oh, I didn't get it. And I moped around for quite a period of time, because this was a bad thing that happened. I didn't get the job. And so eventually I broke myself out, and it's like, okay, it's a bad event. Let's find the positive in it, or we can go. There's other jobs out there, and things like that. And so eventually picked myself up, and started doing some more applications, and I eventually did get another job. And I think too, from that process, when I look back on that as well, when I went for other job interviews, each job interview I got better at. And I've applied for a lot of jobs in my life, and I certainly got very good at in the job interview perspective, in being able to present myself well in a job interview. And so I did. There was a company that I ended up getting a job with. Now, it turned out this was a youngish type company. There were two partners of that, and they had come from a high-end corporate background, from very well, from a very large firm, and they were very well known and very good at what they did. And they took me under their wing, which was great. And now when you look about it, I mean, think about that, and it was like, as I learned through working in the field, the company that I first applied for the job with, um, they weren't very well regarded. In fact, they were known as dodgy brothers, um, quote unquote. But they weren't. They were known for not doing the right things. Now, had I got that job, I would have been labelled with that. But instead, I didn't get the job. Um, and the job that I eventually got was with two partners that were, very good and very well regarded, and and took me under the wing and gave me a lot of really, really insightful training. So it's quite interesting how that played out. Now, was me not getting the job, the first job, bad? Well, it was at the moment. I felt bad about it because I didn't get the job. I wanted this job, and I didn't get it. But it turned out that the fact that I didn't get the job was actually really good, because had I got the job, as I said, I would have been labelled with that reputation. And instead, another opportunity came up where it was much, much more to my benefit and much better for me. And this is where I want to have a look at this situation. Is the situation good or bad? And this comes down to, it's a matter of perspective. You know, at the time when I didn't get that job, the first job I didn't get, or for the first company, the first insolvency company, I didn't get that job. My perspective at that time was, you know, I was not feeling good about it. Because I was really excited about getting, I was not feeling good about it, and I I allowed myself to feel down with myself because I didn't get the job. And my perspective was, I didn't get a job, never going to succeed, blah, blah, blah. I probably didn't say never going to succeed, but I certainly felt upset and going, because I so much wanted that job, that office. And that was my perspective. Now, and certainly, because this was a long time ago, for most of the time now, my perspective of not getting that job is fantastic. It's like, I'm so glad I didn't get that job, and the situation hasn't changed. Me going for the interview, all that preparing for the job, going for the interview, getting myself ready, wearing my suit, waiting there, going through the interview process itself, none of that has changed. It's exactly the same. The difference is my perspective. And this is where I want to, one of my favorite quotes that I use, and this is written by William Shakespeare from Hamlet, where he says, "Nothing is good or bad, thinking makes it so." And that statement itself is about perspective, that your view of the event is determined by your perspective. And what's implied with that is the event has no perspective. The event is neutral. And this is where it's really, really important to think about that and get that. For me, that was a major, major shift in my thinking and how things work, where it doesn't matter what the event is. The event isn't good or bad. And that's why we talk about the power of positive thinking. It's talking about finding the good, finding the good and the bad in things, and finding the good in things that might be bad. And this thinking of nothing is good or bad thinking makes it so. Approaching it that way immediately shifts how you do things, because you don't have to work through, is something good or bad? You don't have to go, oh God, this is, I didn't get this job, or I've, I bought a stock that went down, or whatever it is. It's not about, oh, this is a negative event and how do I find the good in that? It's, this is an event. Now, the key thing that you need to do with that is to give it meaning. So how do we give that meaning? Because the event is just, it is just an event till you give it meaning. So how do we give it meaning? Well, that part comes down to, well, in part it comes down to your beliefs, but also too, if you're, if you're just wandering aimlessly and moving through life and not really thinking about where you're going, then it will certainly be directed by your beliefs. The belief of, if an event, and I know it's extreme, but an earthquake happens, and that's an extreme event. Well, let's take another event where a lot of people talk about it and wish, if they had a time machine, they'd go back and change it. Let's look at World War II. Horrendous event. Um, millions of people died. Millions of people were relocated and displaced, and that kind of thing. A terrible event. And I'm not going to say it's a good event at all. I'm not going to say let's find the positive in that. What I am going to suggest is when you think about that event and the displacement there, had that not happened, see, for us today, we're 70 years on, or even more from that, no, nearly 80 years. If I can do maths, I'm doing maths on the fly here. It's 1940, so yeah, so over 80 years it's been. And when we think about that and the displacement that occurred, and when you think about your conception, now for you to be who you are, for you to exist, that sperm, that right sperm, has to fertilize the egg at that right time. Now think about that. Had World War II not happened and people not been displaced the way they were displaced, the chances of you being born, the chances of you existing, not just you, but your family, your friends, all of that, the chances of that happening, of you existing, your friends existing, is minuscule. And so it's not about going, oh, okay, let's find the good and bad in that. It's like, it's an event. It happened. Yeah, it's horrible. It is a horrible event. There's no other way of putting World War II into any other context. It's a terrible event. But it is an event. And it allowed you to exist. And what you can do with that is take that event moving forward, as many have done, and put in place. That's why we have the UN. That's why we have NATO, to make sure things like that don't happen again. And we can all be part of that to make sure things like that don't happen in the future. And there's lots of things everybody can do. Every person can do things to move towards that. And we'll talk about that in other podcasts. And this is where we want to, if we're shaping, the event, we're giving the event meaning. The best way to give an event meaning is to have an objective, because then no matter what happens, it's something that you can use going forward. And I'll come back to that job interview that I was doing. Well, if, when I didn't get the job, and my perspective was, and my focus was, I want to get a job, then it would simply be a case, and I know because I've done this later on in life. At that time, I was a lot younger, and I was upset that I didn't get the job, and I spent too much time worrying about it and being upset. Whereas now, if I don't get a job or anything that I want, I just see it as I didn't get it, and what's the next step I'm going to take? So it becomes, or not just what next step I'm going to take, how can I improve what I've done? So I'm always looking for, when an event happens and it doesn't work out the way I had planned. In doing a podcast, I will not always present it in the best way that I had planned. Then I look back and go, okay, how can I do it better next time? And this is where making the event just an event, that you color the event, transcends the positive and negative. It's not the event is negative and I've got to find, or the event is bad and I've got to find a way of making that work. And yeah, I mean, our beliefs will adjust to that. I've had a number of events where you would commonly look at that and go, "Oh, that's terrible," and they are, and in a way, they are terrible. And I immediately approached it as going, "Okay, well, that's not great, but what can I do? How can I use this?" And I've had that where it's a case of, I needed to learn something. We're doing one example I was doing recently with a friend, because for a bit of fun, but also it's good for speaking and that kind of thing. But we approached it as a lawyer friend, and we're putting me in the position where I was under a really, really difficult cross-examination. And I thought I was doing pretty well until we finished. And then my lawyer, my friend, explained it to me and said, "Okay, this is that you did this, you did that, and you just failed miserably." And initially, I was like, "Oh wow," and I had I could get upset with that and go, "Oh no, it's not," but I didn't. It was like, okay, right. How can I take that on board? How can I learn from that? How can I move that forward? And immediately I got better. Not did it get better at doing that kind of thing. It affected my whole life and how I did things. I approached things slightly differently because I just saw it as an event, something that I could learn from, and moved forward. And this is where having that clear goal makes all the difference. Being clear about what it is. I mean, sometimes we have that where we go, and you need to think a bit higher as well. I had, I had a number of things I wanted to do during the day. I'm recording this on a weekend, and there was things I wanted to do, but I needed some time just for me. Even though I'd had these number of things that I'd set out that I wanted to do, I needed time for me to just chill out. It'd been a busy week. And so I did that, and it was recognizing, okay, that's an event. I'm feeling now that I need to do this. I need to just chill out for a bit. And I did. I chilled out for a bit. I still got a lot of things done, but I took that time to chill out because I recognized what was going on. And this is where, again, we want to come back to transcending good or bad. If you make something good or bad, and you have to find the good in the bad, that takes a lot of effort. In a lot of cases, it can take a lot of effort because you've really got to go, oh, okay, I've got to find the good in that, and how can I use? And it becomes more about. It becomes quite draining and difficult to do, and you're fighting against this whole. You're fighting against your beliefs, really, because you've interpreted something as bad, and this is where if you approach it differently. If you remember, nothing is good or bad, but your thinking makes it so, then you open yourself up to the opportunity of going, well, okay, this event's neutral. I actually determine whether it's good or bad. It's just an event. This has happened. How can I use this to get where I'm going? So remember, nothing is good or bad. Your thinking makes it so.
Thank you for being part of the Share.Care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.